I'm been very concerned lately about China and sort of they are now all over Africa, buying things and investing over there and getting those countries dependent on them and supporting, non-democratic people. And I'm just
Like
wondering,
whom?
well,
We are in a country that supports Saudi Arabia.
yes, that's
Yeah?
true. Right.
So suddenly we have a problem with, superpowers supporting non-democratic people. And let me explain why you shouldn't worry about that.
Grand rising, my brothers and sisters from Africa and across the ocean. Welcome back to my YouTube space. Africa is rising, that's true. And black people globally, they are rising. And we are rising too fast. And this is a threat to the system, a threat to the Western powers, and a threat to the white people at large, okay? And this conversation is that they don't want to hear this conversation. They don't want you to understand this conversation, and they don't want us or you to speak about this. But I'm going to speak because the time we are right now, power is shifting, and we or you need to be one of the people who is helping the power to shift. And I am here, a brother from Africa, and I see in each and every corner of Africa how we are rising. Now, there's a white man here. I'm going to play his video. He's talking about how Africa is rising, calling out the world to watch out. Okay? A lot of people will come out. A lot will be shocked. A lot of people will be frightened. A lot of the systems and empires will fall down because the shifting of power from them to black people, it is causing them tensions. Okay? They are not ready for this, but we are going on it too hard. And that's what we're going to talk today. But before I go down into my commentary, I want you to watch this short clip here, and then I come back.
Could Pan-Africanism change the world's geopolitical landscape and lead to an economic revolution in Africa? Or is this just another social movement that is all bark and no bite? One thing is for sure, it certainly has certain special interest groups in the Western world worried, and African investors like ourselves excited. The concept of Pan-Africanism has been around for a century, but it's always been a disjointed movement, and whenever there's been progress made in the past generations, it seemed that the leaders would either sell out to the Western interests or find themselves meeting an untimely death. But this new generation of Pan-Africanism seems to be a little bit different, a lot more business-minded and a lot more sophisticated. Whereas the previous movements were mainly political in nature with abstract goals, the current Pan-African movement has very clear objectives and can be tangibly measured. For instance, Ghana and the Ivory Coast united to negotiate better positions for themselves in the cocoa industry. This is set to add billions to each country's economy annually. Zimbabwe has been unifying with lithium-producing nations to bring thousands of manufacturing jobs to the continent. Nigeria was able to leverage their fellow West African nations to have tariffs taken off over 3,000 exports from Africa to Europe, greatly helping African businesses. I can keep going on, but this is the mindset Africa needed from an investor's point of view. Africa has always been rich in talent and natural resources, but when it came to getting their fair cut, they were often divided and given bad deals. And frankly, it was hard to justify investment in a region where resources and wealth would flow out for pennies on the dollar without value being added. But with regions of Africa starting to unite under a Pan-African mindset, wealth will form in Africa much like a lake forms after a dam is built. And what we are seeing today is Pan-Africanism in its most basic form. What is most exciting about modern Pan-Africanism is where it could be in a few decades. The time to invest in Africa is today. I predict that the next generation of ultra-wealthy billionaires will be those who invest in Africa at this critical point in history and help to build the infrastructure, manufacturing, and power sources. So if you wanted to be part of this movement, where do you start? Throughout the Western world, there are Pan-African conferences where prospective investors can network and learn about the opportunities which exist. I recommend you attend one. But allow me to do a plug for an event we are part of in Washington, D.C. on July 22nd. This is called Experience Africa and is the largest Pan-African event for businessmen in the Western world. This is like a Coachella for African investors. We will have over 15 embassies in attendance, so you can ask questions to the governments directly. You'll meet investors who are looking to fund projects, manufacturing specialists, some people who are just retiring to Africa, and even developers like ourselves. And it's not all business. Experience Africa is going to have every type of African and Caribbean food you could imagine, fashion shows, plenty of time to network, and you'll have a speaker list that includes African celebrities, international businessmen, professors from Oxford, and the Roars team will be part of a panel that will talk about buying your first home in Africa. This event might be life-changing for you, so if you are interested in Africa, I would recommend you attend virtually or in person. As an official partner, you can use our code PRT23 to get a discounted ticket courtesy of the Roars team, and all proceeds from this event are going to support orphanages in Africa. The unification of a region is not a revolutionary idea. This is the concept of the European Union, the United States, and people don't realize this, but China was at one point a disjointed series of kingdoms before they united under a pan-Chinese movement. So I see Pan-Africanism as a no-brainer both socially and for business. But I want to know what you guys think. Do you feel Pan-Africanism is something worth supporting? Could it legitimately change the face of African economics? Let me know in the comments below. And as always, if this video brought value to you, give me a like and a follow. That really helps out my channel. And I'll see you on the next video, or maybe I'll see you in Washington, D.C. at Experience Africa. Take care, guys.
America is scared right now. Britain is scared right now because they see Guinea under independent leadership. They see Mali under independent leadership. They see Burkina Faso under independent leadership. They see Niger under independent leadership. They afraid. They scared. They think y'all gonna end up infecting Chad with revolutionary African power. Where my Chadian Africans at? Where my Chadian Africans at? They think you're gonna end up infecting Congo with your revolutionary spirit. They're afraid you're going to end up infecting the Democratic Republic of Congo with your revolutionary spirit. They're afraid you're going to infect Gabon with your revolutionary African spirit. Turn this into a United States of Africa. And then I want you to have a conference of all African leaders who want to be part of the United States of Africa. African Union is over. It's time for the United States of Africa. I said the ancestors have spoken. The ancestors have spoken. And the ancestors have said that the African Union is over. It's time for a United States of Africa. I'm calling on the president of Guinea, the president of Burkina Faso, the president of Niger, and the president of Mali to be the first 4 countries to sign on to a united America is scared right now.
But I want to tell you today that Africa has the resources, the ability, and the people to grow into an economic superpower. It is the richest continent already in terms of natural resources. 30% of the world's cobalt, diamonds, gold, and iron are in Africa. Africa also has huge wealth in oil. Nigeria produces more than 2.5 million barrels of oil per day. On the global market, 1 barrel is worth around $52. Nigeria's oil is worth a lot. Africa already has a booming pharmaceutical industry, and huge progress is being made in fighting back against disease and infections in African countries. More and more African children are going back into school and are being provided with education and improving hygiene practices, which help with stopping the spread of disease. Africa is ideally located for global dominance in trade, with close trading connections to Europe, the Middle East, and Asia. The east coast of Africa has access to the Indian Ocean, which, with the ongoing rise of the Chinese and Indian economies, could become the new centre of global trade. And unlike many countries in the West, including Britain, Africa is not saddled with debt. The British debt is 87% of the British GDP, while the African debt is only 9% of their GDP. All but 2 countries in Africa could pay off their debt within 1 year. So the potential is already there, and the growth is already beginning. Even now, Africa is the continent in the world with the fastest economic growth. The GDP per capita of sub-Saharan Africa is expected to rise by 800% from 2020 to 2050. Anyone who doubts that Africa can make quick economic progress like this should look at the economic history of the US. In 1977, the US economy was the same size as the African economy is today. And since then, the American economy has grown by a massive $18.419 trillion. And with Africa having more natural resources than the US, its progress in the next 40 years could be even more spectacular.
The solution to the mistreatment of Africans is in the hands of Africans. We, as Africans, are responsible for creating an Africa that is politically stable, intellectually empowered, and socioeconomically integrated. As recently stated by the President of Ghana, once African countries start taking themselves seriously, the world will follow. In March of 2018, 44 of Africa's 54 countries agreed to establish a continental free trade area. This is good, this is progress, and will hopefully bring intra-African trade, currently at 12%, closer to the EU's figure of about 65%, I checked this morning. But are signing agreements and photo ops enough? How do we move forward constructively?
Welcome back. Now, I want you to pay attention so much to something. Whenever you hear the Western media talk about Africa, listen to the tone. Whenever you hear white people talk about Africa, listen to the tone. Whenever you hear Western governments talk about white people, listen to the tone. They don't talk about African strength. They don't talk about African beauty. They don't talk about black unity or black beauty or black strength. They don't talk about African intelligence. You hear it? They use words like instability, conflict zones, danger to Western interest. But why is it a danger? Why is it a problem when African nations want to own their own resources? Why is it a problem when Burkina Faso want to own their own resources? Why is it a problem when Mali want to build their own bank, their own currency, want to bring their own currency? Why is it a problem when Burkina Faso, Ibrahim Traore, is asking for knowledge rather than the IMF, the money and donation and everything? Why is it a problem? Why is it a crisis when African leaders say, we don't want to follow your orders anymore? When an African leader rises and say that we don't want you or we don't want your military in our nation, why is it a problem? Let me tell you why, my African brothers and my black brothers and sisters. Because the wealth of Europe, the strength of America, France, and all of these Western countries, the comfort of Western powers was built on the exploitation of African land. It was built on the back of black people. African labor, African suffering, the sweat of black Americans built America. And that's why when black Americans say they want to live, it is tension. They are making it hard for them to live because they know without black people dollar, the nation is not going on. They know without black people sweat, the nation is going on. It's not going on. And that's happening to Africa too. They don't get to steal for free anymore. You know, African rising or black people rising, this means that they don't get to steal for free anymore. It means that no more stealing gold in Ghana. It means that no more cheap uranium from Niger. It means that no more underplaying for Congolese cobalt to build iPhones and electronics. It means fair trade. Thing that Ibrahim Traore is calling out, and more African leaders have come to call out, African liberation. And that's why Pan-Africanism is there. We are fighting for this, African liberation. We need to have control over our own African wealth, okay? And fair trade is a threat to a system that was never fair at the first place. Fair trade is a threat to a system that was made from our own soul, our own death, our own sweat, our own blood as black people. And I always say it's better for us to be real, because the time of these chit-chat games, hide and seek games, it's over. Let's be real. A global system wasn't built on hard work. It was built on robbery. You get that? A lot of empires were built on robbery, not by hard work. And Europe didn't become the rich because they worked better. They always say that we are the most hardworking country. For example, America, they always say we are the hardworking country. But it's not America, they are the hardworking country. Black people in America are the most hardworking people. Migrants in America are the most hardworking people. They have built America from the scratch. They have built the nation from the scratch. Because what we need here, Europe became rich because they enslaved Africans. They became rich because they colonized the entire continent. And that's how Africa, or that's how America got powerful. By colonizing, by enslaving. That's how they got wealthy. That's how America got powerful. That's how Europe got wealthy. And that's why the rising of Africa is a threat to them. Because if Africa controls its own wealth, then the free ride is over. If Africa controls its own wealth, then they are not getting any damn gold from here. And this white man is warning his people now. He's warning his people not because Africa is violent, or not because black people are evil, but because their own power is standing on a foundation of crime. Their own power is standing on a foundation of black man. And that foundation is cracking right now, because the more we unite as Africans and black people across the world, that means their foundation is cracking, and they know it. They know it. And that's why they are putting, some policies and to make sure that we don't get there. Okay? I got some evidence to back up my thinking, because I think we need to have evidence so that some people can understand. Okay? What is really happening right now that is having them panic is, number one, I can say kicking out of Western control. For example, when Mali kicked out France military, when Niger kicked out France, when Burkina Faso kicked out France, when South Africa is trying to reclaim the lands that are owned by white South Africans that were taken illegally. Countries like name it, Burkina Faso and Niger, they have done this, and you have seen how they have been sidelined. They said no to foreign military, and this foreign military, they were there for Europe companies. They were not there for African people. They were not protecting anybody, because the military had like bases everywhere, not because they want to keep peace, but because they want to protect things that they steal, from the land. And these countries are taking back their countries, or these presidents, or the military juntas, or the leaders, they are taking back the countries step by step. And they are not alone. African countries are seeing like joining. More African people are joining, and they are getting a lot of support from African youths. And this is threatening. More Africans are questioning the relationship with Europe. I have talked about how Mali has kicked out the Western control. And number two on my list, I'll talk about controlling of resources. For decades, France used something called the CFA franc to the resources of most of Western countries, currency that kept African countries on them. And that is what a country like Burkina Faso, Mali, and Niger, they're trying to do away with it. Sahel states are trying to change everything. West Africa is rejecting the system. Just few countries, they are still buying the colonial mind. They're still under control. They are still the puppets of the West. But people are asking questions. Africans are asking questions. Western countries, they want African currencies, African banks, African control. And that's why we say black people at large, even black Americans, need to build black schools, build black banks, build black hospitals, And if you don't control your money, you don't control your destiny. And that's the strategy that France used to take charge of West African countries. They control the currency. And that's why America is in control, because a lot of countries are depending on dollar. They're estimating their currency using dollar. And that's why America, you see, it is bragging everywhere, When we have another currency that will take over, BRICS came and they said they want to have their currency called BRICS. Trump got shaken. He started threatening them. And this shows how a country like America much on dollar to control. Talking about BRICS, that is on my number 3. BRICS and new alliance to Africa, they are making sure that Africa isn't begging Europe anymore. African nations are joining BRICS. They are working with China, working with Russia, working with India and Brazil. And they are bypassing the US dollar. This means what? This means that they don't ask permission anymore. This means that it's a threat to the Western powers. Because if Africa stops using the dollar, guess what? The dollar starts falling. And if the dollar go down, it's the fall of the American empire. We have heard each time that America, the empire is falling, empire is falling. It is true, the empire is falling. Just look at what's going on right now. The empire is falling. But for this empire to fall, it will need the black people. What if black people, all of us, unite? They start investing in Africa. They start building Africa. They start building schools in Africa, hospitals and banks in Africa. What if black Americans start investing their dollar in Africa? This means the fall of America. But I get Some Americans will say that this is our nation because they were born there. They don't know anywhere place. And I understand that. And that's why a lot of black people or black Americans are still fighting for their place in America. But it is hard. They live on fighting. The kids come, live on fighting. The grandchildren comes, live on fighting. We don't need to fight a losing battle. A battle when we know that we have our battlefield somewhere, that when you come and tackle us here, we can win from here. Number 4, I will talk about the youths. The youths are awake. African youths, black youths, they are awake. Africa has the youngest population in the world. And these young people are not brainwashed by colonial lies anymore. They know their history. They know their rights. I know my history. And I keep on learning the history. And we as young people, we know that who has been stealing from us for centuries. We know that. So young people, they don't want to be Europe workers. Right now, young people are no longer going to work in Europe. They want to build the nations, want to put their brain here in the countries. They want to be the owners. They want ownership of their land, their culture, and their technology. They want their wealth. So the generation that we are living right now is full of African youths, full of young youths who they have the zeal of change. They have the zeal of gradual change, like one-time change. Okay? So this is why people are getting shocked and warned about the rising of Africa. I will talk about black global unity. I will talk about how it is the real threat. But I've been talking about that for long. Black unity is the real weapon we have, or is the real threat to the global, stage. We have been divided for long. It's called a divide and conquer, and they have been doing that to us, divide and conquer on us for too long. Okay, they kept black Americans separate from Africa, and they kept Caribbeans separate from Africans. And they don't like, or they told lies like Africans sold you into slavery. That is the lies they've been using too much. And this lies is to divide us. When black Americans hear this story of Africans sold you into slavery, they are like, you are not like us anymore. You are not one of us. But black people worldwide are starting to connect again. See how black Americans are going to Ghana. That is a threat to them. They have been trying to make it hard to get the visa and everything. Black people are reconnecting right now. More black Americans are visiting Ghana, Nigeria, Kenya, South Africa. More Jamaicans, more Caribbeans are visiting Africa. They are buying lands, are starting business, and they are creating a relationship because deep down, we know we are one people. Deep down, we know that we are the sons and daughters of this land. And that is the nightmare to the system, because they know if the diaspora unite with Africa, then we are going to conquer. They know if diaspora unite with Africa, we don't just build communities. We will build empires. We will build wealth. We will build media. We will build education. And they know about this. I want to be 100% clear. This is not about black people wanting revenge. The power shifting is not about black people wanting revenge. This is about justice. Justice means that African children getting education for free. Justice means that no more child slaves mining cobalt for American tech companies. That means no more mothers dying into gold mines to enrich some people. Justice means Africans' oil and gas being used to build African roads, schools, and hospitals, not to power Paris and London. And they know that we know. If justice happens, their entire economic system collapses. If justice happens, the entire empire goes down. But justice is coming. And it's coming from us black people. The one who benefited from the old system, they are screaming. Africans or black people are not dangerous, but because the days of living of black suffering is done. So we are a threat. We are a threat. When we unite, we are a threat. When we build, we are a threat. When we conquer, we are a threat. When we take charge, we are a threat. We are not dangerous. They are just scared they're going to lose the privilege they have been having for long. Okay? So I will say this. This is just the beginning. This is just the start. And they can always push propaganda. They can send soldiers, the Langley type. They can take down African leaders like they did to Patrice Lumumba. But you cannot assassinate the truth, okay? You can't take down the whole diaspora waking up to their power. Or as black people, we are not going backwards. We are coming up too fast. Black Americans, I want you to listen to me. Your ancestors built American wealth. Your ancestors built American wealth. Your creativity, your influence, your voice is global. Now imagine that power connected to the resources of Africa. Black Americans, imagine not having to beg for loans, okay? Imagine building our own system. You are so creative, talented. You keep on good culture. You bring about each and every trend. Imagine having your own system, no middlemen, no colonial banks, no permission needed. And that's where we want to go. And that's where we are going. No matter how many warnings they may give on the mainstream media, that's what's coming. So we as black people, we need to be vigilant. And let's unite. We must unite. That's the only weapon we have. To the white man who is giving warning, thank you for telling this, because we need your fellow to know that Africa is rising. Black people are rising, and this is the time for change. So I think this message hits home. Tell me what you think on the comment section about this video. I have a problem with my light, yeah? So I'm sorry for that. I'll cut short so that I see what to do. Until next episode, peace out.